This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area. Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We want to know more, do you? Informed Sources brings our region's top print and broadcast journalists together.
To examine the stories behind the headlines.
And we can all learn more.
Hello, Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, it can be said that the head coach of the Saints was a Super Bowl winner last Sunday. Of course, it was with a different team, but maybe now he can bring his skills here. Governor Jeff Landry was apparently inspired by the big game as he announced plans for an offense effort to attract more business. We will look at these stories as well as some anticipated real estate developments, plus Jefferson Parish's bicentennial. And in this week of football, what the game's future looks like for kids' safety. Starting for us are our Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, Jeff Duncan, sports columnist for the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and Tony McAuley, staff writer for the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. We go over to Jeff because we have a new head coach for the Saints.
Yes, we do. It's been a little bit of a wait, right? I think the Saints were the second team in the league to move on from their head coach last year and the last team to actually replace that coach, hiring Kellen Moore, the youngest NFL coach in the league, 36 years old. He's just a few months older than some of the players he'll be coaching next year, assuming players like Demario Davis and Cam Jordan do come back. He's the youngest head coach in Saints history as well as the 12th head coach. So there's a lot of enthusiasm right now. I think it's a good move in a lot of ways because he is young. This is going to be a big job rebuilding this team. I don't think it's a job for a retread head coach. So I think Mickey Loomis, Gail Benson, the brain trust with the Saints, leaned into a young, enthusiastic, energetic guy. This is his first head coaching job at any level. And he has been a rising star in the league. You talk to people in league circles, you hear nothing but rave reviews about his intelligence, his preparation, his game planning acumen, just off the charts. Now we'll see if he can get it done here because, like I said, he's got a big job ahead of him.
Well, I mean, he just won Super Bowl. He did an excellent job, obviously, over at the Eagles.
How about the existing coaches, the ones who were here this past season?
Well, most of those will be moving on. Matter of fact, Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach, just accepted a job, shocker, with Sean Payton in Denver, like most of the other Saints coaches have ended up out in Denver with Sean. But most of those coaches, there's one retained, Keith Williams, the wide receivers coach, is going to be a part of it. But most of those coaches will probably be moving on because he's going to want to bring in his own coaching staff.
How hard will it be for him to actually build a team of coaches at this point in the season?
That's a good point, Dawn, because the Saints are the last team to make the hire. A lot of these other coaches have already gone and signed with other head coach opportunities. So, but I'm sure he had some people in mind, and you can always hire somebody as a promotion. So, one of the people that has been targeted is Brendan Staley, who he actually worked under with the Los Angeles Chargers. Brendan Staley was the head coach of the Chargers when Kellen was the offensive coordinator. Looks like it could flip around now. He could be the defensive coordinator here.
Of course, he's just been named as our head coach, but the question that kept being thrown at him was, what about our quarterback? Who's that going to be?
Yeah, and I think it's too early to say. He's just gotten on the job a few days ago. I'm sure those next few meetings with the personnel department, Mickey Loomis, the general manager, those personnel meetings will take place over the next few weeks. He's got to hire staff first, but they have to make a decision on Derek Carr structurally because of his contract before the start of March. So we'll know his status in the next 3 to 4 weeks, whether he comes back or not. He was very non-committal, but I didn't read too much into that because, like I said, he just accepted a job 48 hours earlier. He's trying to win the biggest game of his entire career. He was focused on that, not whether he's going to who his head coach is or who his quarterback is going to be here.
He did that pretty well, too.
Yeah,
it was
he did.
definitely a decisive win.
Yeah, look, that was an impressive win. I mean, I obviously he had a lot of help. I mean, they have a very good team. They have a very good all-around team. At the end of the year, they look like the best team in the NFL, and I think they showed it on Sunday.
No, they really did. So thinking of the future, Kellen Moore, what kind of team do you think he will build, given his history and his talents? Are there certain things that he's going to try to do with the Saints?
Well, he's compared a lot to Sean Payton, in that when Sean Payton was hired here, he was a very young, aggressive, ambitious, offensive-minded coach. That's the trend in the NFL. So I expect you're going to see a lot of, high-octane offenses the way Sean Payton had here under Drew Brees. He was a former Kellen Moore was a former quarterback, a lot like Drew Brees himself, was kind of an undersized player that got by on moxie and intelligence, just the way Brees did. So I think he's going to look for similar players with those same kind of characteristics and traits. He kept saying we want a smart, physical team. So, that's common coach speak around the NFL. That's how everybody wants it. But I do think he's a very cerebral guy that came across in his press conference. He's not Dan Campbell, the former Saints assistant that coaches the Lions now. He's not that alpha personality. He's more of a, I think, offensive strategist. He's not going to be cocky or confident the way Sean Payton was. His personality is really completely different. But I think his teams will mirror a lot of Sean Payton's teams in that they're going to be aggressive going after opposing defenses. That's his background. That's obviously what he feels comfortable with.
So the salary cap, how is that going to help or hurt?
Well, I mean, the Saints have the worst cap in the league, again, like they always do. And that's something they're going to have to work through. That's why I would just caution everyone, as exciting as it is right now with the new head coach, and you should be excited. He's a very highly regarded prospect. They've got a lot of issues to sort through, including the salary cap issue. And we talked a little bit about some of the veteran players on defense. Some of the stars of this team might not be back. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, some of the older players that have bigger contracts. I think that is going to be something in these personnel meetings that they're going to have to make difficult decisions to get under the salary cap. It may come at a cost with some of the better-known players on the team.
Why isn't the team always a salary cap? Is that a management issue or?
Yeah, philosophical issue. The way they say. Really, what happened, Errol, is years ago. It started years ago when they had Drew Brees at the end of his career, and they were trying to win another Super Bowl with Drew Brees. So they kept kicking the can down the road, restructuring contracts because they had a window of opportunity to win a Super Bowl, and it made a lot of sense back then. But they kind of carried that over. It's kind of like your credit card. You just keep putting more down on it, and eventually it builds up, and you've got to pay the piper, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Tony, did you have something?
I was close to the bone there. I was just wondering, because he got a lot out of Saquon Barkley where the Giants couldn't. Is there a player or players in the Saints that that you think he might be looking to get more out of in that way?
Well, I think one guy that for sure he's mentioned is Taysom Hill. We've all seen how phenomenal Taysom Hill is in that versatile role, and he's kind of a joker, a utility player, and I think he's definitely going to utilize him. They're both from the Mormon Church, so I think there's a little bit of connection there from both being out west, and I expect Taysom Hill to have a big role going forward. He was one of the players that a lot of people thought, because of his contract, might not be back. But the way Kellen Moore talked about him the other day, I expect them to try and keep him on board.
Okay, another chapter for the Saints. We'll be looking for it. Thanks a lot. All right, Tony, let's talk about the Governor Landry's hopes for the future for Louisiana, kind of piggybacking on the great success of our Super Bowl.
Yeah, among the billion words I think we wrote about the Super Bowl in the last year or so, what we concentrated on before the Super Bowl, going back even a year, was the efforts to get the city in shape, And the story there was that the governor got very nervous in the spring of last year about where we were with that, and made this big effort that we've covered for a while now about trying to get what people have characterized as 10 years of infrastructure work done in about 6 or 7 months. And there were other things that he has done in his first year that have been aimed at making the city more business friendly, like the security issues and the homelessness problem as well. And at the same time, then he's done sort of business-friendly policies like on tax and restructuring Louisiana economic development. So the week before Super Bowl was a big week for him. He was squiring around a number of they didn't name the names for security reasons, but like CEOs of really big companies. And one of his main objectives of the Super Bowl was to try to give a really good impression to these businesses. So what I asked him in an interview after the Super Bowl then was, after that special effort, those special efforts, leading up to the Super Bowl, what's next? Do we carry on with this infrastructure program, which essentially was a relatively low-cost coordination role to bring city and state agencies together and for about $200,000 hire a project management firm to oversee it and have meetings and make sure stuff got done. And they fixed, potholes and leaks that had been around for literally a decade or more, And so a lot of New Orleanians, I think, were asking, so, we're going to do this going forward. And the governor didn't want to get granular, as he said. In other words, he didn't want to give a specific answer. Right. But he generally indicated that that would be something that he would want to have happen. Similarly with the homelessness issue, it was kind of a last-ditch effort to find a warehouse over on France Road and do a sweep up of some of the encampments, prior to the game. But the question really is is it going to be stopgap measures like that, or is there something more permanent, some sort of policy that's going to be put in place? And the answer there, again, was a little vague. But I talked to people that are close to him, senior advisors of his, who have said that he wants to actually completely change the way the homelessness issue is funded here. It's through agencies that have been around quite a long time, and the feeling is that the agencies tend to, because they're in the business of looking after homelessness, they're not necessarily in the business of solving the homelessness issue. And so he seems to want something radical done on that front,
So it's quality of life and also business interest. And so because this is an issue that we live with now down here, and not just here, other states too, but the homeowners insurance or, home insurance. Where is he standing on that? Well,
that was a surprising answer that he gave me, actually. We didn't get into it too much. We kind of just skipped past tax policy. He wants to, they passed some tax reform last year, but which got us from 40th out of 50 states to 26th if they did the rankings now. And he wants to push that on further, decomplicating, simplifying the tax code here, and if they can, they'd love to push income tax to zero. The high-ranking states have zero income tax, but the insurance is not, because that's an independently elected commissioner, and it's one of the big issues. What he said to me that was surprising about that was that he would be in favor of a public answer to that. So we talked about this in previous shows. The market. I mean, he specifically said that to me. He said these companies have been great about rewarding their shareholders, but the American consumer has been left in the middle. And he said, he's I can't remember his exact words now, but that he's not against a public answer to this. And there've been a couple of things floating around about a federal way to issue bonds to be able to deal with catastrophes in the insurance industry.
And trying to keep our
it's kind of interesting,
down.
And just generally politically for Landry is like when I was asking about the infrastructure thing, he brought up Elon Musk's effort in Washington, which has nothing to do with what we were talking about. So I think oftentimes the rhetoric and what's practically happening don't necessarily match up. I think he seems to be okay with compromises and practical solutions to problems.
So he spent a week solidly selling Louisiana, right? Face-to-face
right up to being
meetings,
in Gail Benson's booth with some of those owners, NFL owners or big business owners. Home Depot guy had his yacht parked
So we'll see where it all takes us then.
Yeah.
All right, Tony, thanks a lot. E, over to you. Jefferson Parish is celebrating a birthday, big one.
It doesn't seem like it's 200 years already.
Oh, it doesn't.
It seems
No,
like it was just
not a day.
yesterday. Okay, yeah. Actually, February 11th, which was this past Tuesday, with the anniversary that Governor Henry Johnson in 1825 signed legislation essentially moving some parishes, moving some land around between Jefferson Parish and Orleans and creating Jefferson Parish. The area in New Orleans between Felicity Street across to the St. Charles border used to be part of Jefferson Parish. That got moved around, but the senatorial district got incorporated. Anyway, we came out of that with today's Jefferson Parish. And through the years, there's been some jiggling around. But it's an unusual parish in that it is, I mean, a lot of parishes, including all of our so-called river parishes, were divided by the river at some point. But this is a big division that we have of the Mississippi River. It's at its biggest and most powerful. And so we have a really pronounced East Bank and West Bank. And so it's two different places. You know, between the Lake Pontchartrain on the north, the shore of Lake Pontchartrain, and the Gulf of Mexico on the south, it's 60 miles. And so it's unusual anywhere to see a county that's 60 miles long, and so it's that big. And to drive from there to one to the other, you got to go through another parish, and so it's different. But if you look back at the parish, I think some of the key developments was well, early in it, like a lot of areas, there was a big Native American population, big Houma Indian population. But as it grew, this is what the population is like today. If I would tell you that Jefferson Parish is the second largest parish in Louisiana, you'd accept that. But you'd say, yeah, of course, well, Orleans is first. Actually, East Baton Rouge is first. It's the largest parish in population. Then Jefferson, then Orleans Parish, and then, as you see, St. Tammany and Lafayette. Now, if you combine Jefferson, Orleans, and St. Tammany, three parishes that are right next to each other, you can see that it's that the metro area is 1 million plus. And so that's what makes us able to get like a pro football team and that sort of thing. And so it grew, but the real growth has been in Jefferson Parish and in St. Tammany. I think some key moments in the development of these parishes is one, the infrastructure things. When I-10 was built, before I-10 on the East Bank, you had Jefferson Highway and Airline Highway, which were both going east-west. I-10 just opened up everything and gave people a fast route in and out of New Orleans. And then on the West Bank, you had the West Bank Expressway. And when the so-called Crescent City Connection was built, that really opened up that end of the West Bank. There was always the Huey P. Long Bridge, but the Crescent City Connection opened up downtown New Orleans and made all of that feasible. One little, Jefferson Parish has, I don't know if any other county can say this, that the House Majority Leader and Supreme Court Justice are both from Jefferson Parish. And right. I don't know if any other county can claim that. And I'd like to think that one day they were, when they were kids, they were in a snowball stand.
In one specific area of Jefferson Parish, too, in Metairie. They both grew up in Metairie, went to Metairie schools. Okay, we wanted to let everybody know that there's going to be a special Informed Sources in 2 weeks at the usual time for Informed Sources coming up about Jefferson Parish. And also, I think we have a showing tomorrow. We have a
we'll show the
graphic about that, so you all can see that it will air tomorrow night, Saturday night at 5, and then again for our regular Informed Sources time on February 28th, and then again on March 2nd at 9:30. So, and Tony was on that as well on the panel for a special look at
we talk about
Jefferson
politics, business, geography,
and population
trivia.
growth, etc.
It's a good show.
Yeah, it is a very interesting show. Okay, thanks a lot. Don, over to you. We're talking football. What about football for kids' safety?
Well, football, obviously all eyes were on the Super Bowl, and it makes all the little kids out there think, maybe I want to do that one day. And the question is, are they doing it in the numbers they once did? And for 2021, 2022, in the United States, it was the first year this century, meaning the 21st century, that there were fewer than 1 million kids playing high school football. There has definitely been a decline. The decline started with all of the brain injury research that came out in the mid-2000s, and it continued with Damar Hamlin's collapse on the field with maybe a heart issue. You had a bunch of parents who started being concerned, and really more concerned. So there have been some changes. Now, Friday Night Lights in the South are a big deal, have always been a big deal, will continue to be a big deal. In fact, I talked to both NORD and JP Rex Department this week to see where their numbers are. NORD says their program is still very robust. They definitely don't have the numbers they had in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. They saw a real hit in the mid-2000s when the concussion research came out, but they are seeing growth back to pre-COVID numbers. They had 1,500 or more kids participating in their program. Jefferson Parish has 100 more kids than they had in the last 3 years on the East Bank and the West Bank. And all of the coaches now, volunteer, paid, whomever, in all of the rec departments have to go through the USA Football coaching education program. That includes information on concussion recognition, sudden cardiac arrest, hydration and heat warnings, proper equipment fitting, you name it, they all have to go through this course. They're also going through courses on proper tackling. So they're doing what they can to make it more safe. In Jefferson Parish, all of their equipment is reconditioned. They send their football helmets back to the manufacturer every 2 years for refurbishing and reconditioning to make sure they're safe. A lot of the programs use either mandatory or voluntary things called guardian caps, which are like, you see them in the NFL all the time now, but the kids are wearing them too. So they're doing their part to keep things safer. Football's definitely declining more in other parts of the country than it is here, but the big growth area, both here and elsewhere, is flag football. NORD says they're going to have a huge program starting this summer, both girls and boys flag. There will be girls high school flag football starting. NORD just received, thanks to Nike, a new turf field at Joe Brown Park. They also received the Super Bowl turf. The actual turf that the Super Bowl was played on is going to the Lafitte Greenway for where middle school football is played. So it is still growing, but there are definitely people keeping much closer eyes on the safety of our children.
The safety issue, yeah. All right, Don, thanks a lot. Good information. All right, Tony, let's wrap it on up with you because we have some pretty significant real estate developments going on in the parish of Orleans, along the riverfront especially.
Well, yeah, in the River District, which is that neighborhood that's going up, and it's been quite some time kind of getting going. Big milestone that they hit last week was they finally got the funding in place to build the Shell Plaza, as they call it, which will be the anchor tenant, be Shell Oil moving in there. And although it's much scaled back from what originally was conceived there, it's supposed to be 147,000 square feet. The actual office part of it's going to be only about 60,000 something square feet. But aside from that, they got it funded, and Louis Lauricella, who's the lead developer on that, also told the Convention Center board that they were close to moving ahead with something on the Market Street Power Plant, another big old blighted, one of those big blighted buildings in the city that people have been, having to look at for 4 decades, 5 decades. So I talked to a few kind of top real estate development types, and another one that's going to be moving ahead before the half year is the NSA building over on Poland Road, another blighted building that's putting in housing there, including some affordable housing. And what's happening is that after a long period of the money guys in the property development were kind of sitting on the sidelines because of the post-COVID inflation on building costs and higher interest rates and so on. They're finally getting back in now that things have kind of stabilized a bit. And so we're seeing some of the big projects around here moving just as they are, elsewhere in the country. But I think, people will be happy to see that there's some movement on those projects.
A lot of people will be. And for the River District, is there a music museum also, Louisiana Music Museum? That's supposed to be going over there?
Louisiana, what's it called? Heritage and Music Experience. I don't know if I got the wording the right way around. They did another little move on that, another little milestone there to allow them to move forward. But it really hinges on whether the legislature in the next session gives them the money, part of the money that they need. It's about $40 million they need from the state, and the rest is coming from private sector donations and some, the usual kind of tax credits and so on. So that's right next to the Shell Plaza in that area.
So they're still working on it.
And they also mentioned, by the way, on the sports front, they also mentioned that they're they're making progress on a potential small stadium there, which would potentially be home to a professional soccer team here. There'll only be about 13 games a year.
What's the season for that if it were outdoor?
The hot months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the issues they've been talking about. But they've done it in other hot cities in the Southwest. Over in Arizona and places like that. So I'm sure they have ways around it, maybe night games or something like that.
Okay, all righty. Well, we'll be seeing how all that goes. Okay, guys, we're going to go around the table. Other stories.
Here again, I want to remind everybody our bicentennial broadcast. So watch it. It's a good show. Also this weekend, the New Orleans Gold, the rugby team, this season is starting. They'll be playing throughout the summer and spring. They're part of a new group that's claiming this long-term commitment, this 30-year commitment to developing rugby. And so it's a fun game if you understand it, and it's kind of like football, but it's fun to watch. At the stadium we used to call the Shrine on the Airline when the Zephyrs were there. Now it's called the Gold Mine.
The Gold Mine.
Right.
All right. Don, over to you.
Loyola University wanted to get out there. There's a great photo exhibit in their Dieball Center on the top of the Monroe Library. It's a tribute to Harold Baquet's photographs. It's called Picturing Blackness. Lots of great imagery of African-American community and life, and that's open through April 24th.
And where's that again?
The Dieball Center at Monroe Library at Loyola.
Okay, very good. Jeff, over to you.
Well, it was a big day of races at the fairgrounds on Saturday. The Risen Star Stakes, one of 6 races on a 14-race card, a lot of races. And the Risen Star, of course, is one of the big Kentucky Derby prep races. So a lot of horses that finish at the top of that race will go on to the Run for the Roses in the first Saturday of May.
Exciting. Okay. Tony?
If I could do a little plug, we've just relaunched a standalone business section on Sunday. And this Sunday, we're trying to get some break news in that section.
So the Advocate.
In the Times-Picayune and Advocates and editions of the Advocate.
And on NOLA.com too.
And it's a physical product.
Yeah.
Still do those. And I've got I was given the task of breaking news in this coming edition Sunday. So I've got something interesting there about something that happened to a very iconic New Orleans building, if anybody wants to check it out.
Okay, definitely. So that's coming out this Sunday. And of course, on NOLA.com, you have your e-edition as well. So you can see that printed edition just digitally. Right. All right, guys, thanks a lot for joining us here around the table. And thank you all for joining us, too. We'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
From Masterpiece to Nova, Antiques Roadshow to Agatha Christie.
And of course, stepping out and Informed Sources.
We are pleased to support public television.
It's been our passion.
For a lifetime.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.